Today on the Kuvio Caller.
A lot of people think they open their mouth, they make noise, and there, I'm communicating. And, communication is the transfer of information from transmitter to receiver in its basic sense. So to get that message across and have it not be garbled is not simple.
I chat with Bruce Eddy, a jack of all trades and personal mentor, about perfecting the art of communication and integrating those practices into business. What's up, everybody? My name is Joseph Young, and I am the founder and CEO of Kuvio Creative, and welcome to episode 5 of the Kuvio Caller. I am joined today by literally one of the most amazing people on earth, and somebody that I go way back with. His name is Bruce Eddy. Say hi, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
So Bruce is, everything under the sun. He's a data analyst wizard. He's a customer relations guru. He's also been a personal mentor to me, both throughout kind of my software development career and my journey as CEO of Kuvio. He's kind of been around for all of that. We started working together at E.F. Johnson Technologies. Gosh, when? In 2010?
Yeah, it was 9 years ago, yeah.
9 years ago, wow. Yeah. So I was a software developer then, and Bruce was a business analyst there, but also kind of a programmer as well. He was selling VBA, is that right?
Yes.
So and we started working on different projects together, and just really kind of hit it off. We have a very similar as well. We were both Taurus.
Yes.
Right?
And
so
we were both kind of self-taught with software and
self-taught with software. Both musicians, both piano players. So yeah, we're basically clones. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about communication today. We're going to talk about kind of that, something that's I've just been really fascinated with, that you and I have had conversations for years now, is that sort of interface between the customer and the person doing the work for the customer, and how that's always so freaking broken, and how kind of we've discovered over the years, and the thing that I feel like is probably one of the things that you do best is how to kind of define that interface in a way that two sides that basically don't speak the same language at all can come together and actually get something done. And I feel like kind of your unique perspective is that you've been on both sides, right? Like you were telling me some history about you, a previous job that you had, where you kind of did the same thing, like translator in chief, essentially.
Right. I sat around a table with some engineers, and we would have a customer on the phone, and the customer would ask a question, and the engineers would all look confused, and I would kind of translate it into engineer speak, and they'd say, "Oh," and they would answer, and I could hear that the customer was confused. So I'd translate it into customerese, and it's basically just putting yourself in the shoes of the listener and saying, okay, how do I phrase things to have it make sense to this other person?
Well, what do you think is unique about your ability to do that? Do you think it's that combination of both the engineering experience and the sort of sales experience?
Yeah, that in the business world, communication for me personally has been something that I've been intrigued with for decades now, and have really, on my own, not official schooling or anything, but studied it and paid attention through life as I've communicated and I've seen other people communicate. There was a period in my life where I actually kind of ended up being like a marriage counselor, because I would look at a couple of friends, and when they would have problems, I would well, I see exactly what the problem is. You're not understanding this about her, and she's not understanding this about him. So I'd step in and kind of do the same translation kind of thing of here's what she means or here's what he means. So it, like you kind of mentioned, it's a matter of being able to put yourself into the other person's shoes, and a lot of stuff comes very clear. when you can do
so
that.
even more so than the specific engineering sales experience, it's just essentially having empathy for both sides and
Empathy is a good word. Yes.
Sitting for a moment in the other person's shoes.
And there's a lot of little tricks and everything, not tricks in a bad way, but little skills, little ways that you can, if you actually think about it, when you communicate with somebody, you tend to use words that make sense to you because you're talking and your brain is working and everything like that. But you need to take an extra step and say, okay, how will these words be received by this other person? Who is this other person? What's their background? And because you can pick 10 different words to kind of convey the same thing, but only half of them will actually convey the message to the other person. And a lot of times we do this naturally, sometimes without even thinking about it. For example, if a father is talking to their child and his wife is going to go to the store and the child says, where's she going? The dad will say, mommy is going to the store. He used the word mommy. And that's because that's what the child would understand. He didn't say Diane or whatever her name is. He didn't say my wife. He used the word that would make sense to the receiver. And that's a real simple example, but it's extremely powerful because you can take that kind of thing that you do naturally, and if you think about it, you can apply it to all of your conversations, and it becomes very powerful.
And what's interesting about that is that sort of exercise of you getting into that other person's shoes so that you can kind of naturally choose the language that you use for them, that also has the effect of teaching you about their side of things.
Exactly.
Right.
And then the reverse happens. Now, when they speak to me, even if they're not doing this exercise in their brain, because of that empathy, I can say, I see what they mean by this. Because, I would not have said it that way, but I understand what they're saying because, like you just said, I've put myself in their shoes. And so often somebody will say something and they'll say, oh, no, wait, that didn't come out right. And I said, no, I understand. And I love this phrase. I say, I listen to what you mean, not what you say.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful phrase. And I wish everybody would do that because everybody's getting really sensitive nowadays. Yeah. And I think it's because they're taking things in ways that the speaker didn't intend. And if everybody just kind of got together and says, okay, this is not a bad person. They're not going to say something mean. So when they say something and it feels mean, then I need to look at it and say, okay, what other interpretation could this person have meant? Because it probably wasn't meant that way that I took it.
And that's overwhelmingly the case, right? Like yes. Even if somebody does intend to be mean for a second, it usually has a context behind it, right? Like they probably had a horrible day, or they're insecure about something, or whatever. And if that context is understood by the other person in as best of the ways as you can, without
sure.
the person to be completely transparent about everything, then I mean, in the vast majority of cases, at least in my experience, I would have been exactly the same way. And so would most humans, right? Because we all kind of have these very similar reactions once we are actually able to walk a mile in the other person's shoes.
Yeah, it really enhances communication because a lot of people think they open their mouth, they make noise, and I'm communicating. And, communication is the transfer of information from transmitter to receiver. In its basic sense. So to get that message across and have it not be garbled is not simple. Everybody thinks, you just talk, you just explain things. And how often if we explain something and somebody does something completely different from, I just told you what to do. Why are you doing that? That kind of thing. But they are doing what they understood. So instead of saying, I just explained it, why are you doing that? Say, okay, we had a disconnect here because that's not at all what I meant to say, and kind of, instead of blaming the person for not listening or being dumb or, like so many things that people do, you can say, oh, we had a disconnect. Let's figure this out, and kind of put the blame, if you will, on the disconnect, which is nobody's fault. There's not, when there's a misunderstanding, that's another important thing I think needs to get out there is the speaker is not at fault and the listener is not at fault. There was just a miscommunication. Yeah. And so you can start digging into, okay, when I said this, what did you think? And have them like repeat it back. And so often you'll very quickly get to, oh, there's the problem. I mean, in fact, you and I have done that too. And I said, oh, I see the problem, and it's when you get that key that was misinterpreted or not interpreted it in the way that you intended to send it, you can instantly revise how you say it. And they say, oh, okay. And then bang, you guys are back on track again. It's pretty powerful. It's work because you have to actively, pay attention. You can't just kind of blindly just speak and assume everything's going to go across. But man, oh man, does it ever enhance everything. Everything goes so much smoother. Personally, in your personal life and in business, yeah.
Yeah, so you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about this, I feel like series of at least 7 of the 9 years, or probably more, where you have slowly been working me to get on a phone call versus type back and forth.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And now it's kind of like I'm assuming that it's because, well, I mean, the shallow reason is because it's, faster and easier to talk on the phone than type everything. But it's also you get all of the nuances of emotion, and back and forth, being able to play off of each other and kind of recognize all of that.
Very much so. When you are typing to each other, whether it's texting or email or whatever, if it's just words on a screen, you have 92% more chance of misunderstanding because you can't hear tone, and being together is the best because you can get all the physical cues, the facial expressions. And if you're kind of teasing, your voice takes on a certain tone. And the receiver says, he's just messing around. Whereas if I type those words literally and you don't hear the voice, you can say, what a jerk. Why the heck's he saying this? So it's a lot of times when I try and get you to talk on the phone, it's because we have something that I know is going to need a lot of back and forth. And I know it's going to have a lot of little subtle differences. And it's so much easier to get to the goal line if you can hear in their voice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have come to agree with that. I mean, that's one of the lessons that I've learned is get in the room. And if you can't get in the room, get on a phone call, because you'll be able to have a conversation in an hour that you couldn't have in a week over email.
Yes, exactly. And it's just, you just reminded me of something else. We had recently talked about the power of physically visiting a customer, getting face to face. And you think, then it's day of telecommunication and we can talk on the phone, we can text, we can email, whatever. But there is nothing more powerful than sitting across from somebody, looking them in the eye, and actually getting to know them. It's more than just a little bit better understanding. It's exponential, and it's surprising the power of FaceTime. If that's one way to put it. So,
were you ever a people watcher growing up?
I was growing up, but I still am. I love people watching. People are really interesting,
I feel like with that sort of kind of intuition that you have, like you're able to pick up just people, invent a story for them over the last
that's a good way to put it. And it's really it's really a powerful thing, because you can meet somebody, and I getting to know people, they're always surprised at, how did you know that? Like that they would like something or dislike something or something like it. And I smile and just say, I pay attention. It's in my mind, it's really that simple. If you take the time and make the effort to watch a person and to really listen to what they say, it goes beyond that. It's like, what makes this person laugh? What makes this person angry? And you can file all that and you really get a good feel for who this person is. And, sometimes you think, okay, I know not to talk politics with this person because it's a button or something like that. But, just how easy is it to get along when you actually care about the other person? And that goes back to what you said about empathy. The more you understand about it, you inherently start caring about the person just because you understand them. And
do you feel like so one of the kind of tenets of what we do at Kuvio that we really like go all in on is the notion of being able to run experiments and being okay with failing and being okay with learning from failures and all of those kind of things. Do you feel like that sort of back and forth communication process, especially meeting somebody for the first time, like could that be seen as a series of experiments that you're running and you're seeing the kind of the reaction to them and learning in real time from that series?
The answer is yes. And it's really funny because you just used a word that is an example of what I wouldn't do. And let's explore this for 1 second. You use the word experiment.
Yeah.
And yes, that is what's going on. But if you use that word, it's going to make the other person feel like, something in a petri dish or something. Oh, fine, you're experimenting on me. That makes me feel great. But I understand exactly what you mean, and you're correct. But that's an example of let's use a different word. Instead of saying you experiment on this person, say you pay attention and you learn as you go on. See how we're saying the exact same thing, but it feels really different on the other side, and that's really, really powerful because you can make people relax. Yeah.
But you can also say the inverse, right? Is that the experiments that we do in design and development and everything are also us just paying attention and learning
exactly
our surroundings and context.
Yeah. Yes, but
I'm never going to use the word experiments ever again.
In a interaction context, in a human context, because it takes away the caring aspect. It sounds very clinical. So little things like that, you start to learn, okay, use this word instead of that word and all this kind of stuff. And it's not being sneaky. It's not being manipulative. It's just greasing the conversation and relationship to have it flow easier. And it really does minimize misunderstandings because so often people react to a word and all of a sudden you're way off on this tangent, arguing or talking about something that you had no intention of even going there. And again, you can look at that in marriages and relationships. You're talking about a movie and all of a sudden you're arguing about the drive home and how did that happen? That kind of thing. So using the right words avoids that kind of stuff. And if you have two people doing it, you're each actually paying attention to what the other person means, not what they say.
And it becomes a beautiful kind of feedback loop, right?
Very much so. Very much so. Because if you're both doing the empathy thing, holy mackerel, sky's the limit.
Kind of along that vein, with kind of the sales background that you have, and the way that I've always kind of seen traditional sales roles that you corrected me on over the years, but I've always had this feeling that the traditional kind of purely commission-based sort of entry-level sales role always seems to be like an exercise against openness and transparency, and it always felt to me more like kind of hiding what you needed to hide to be able to make the sale that you needed to make. And I've always like naturally tried to push back against that. And I'm just curious, like, on your thoughts about how radical you think people should try to be from a transparency perspective and explaining all of the private nuances of themselves and of what's going on so that other people can have that context versus, and even in the business sense, right? Like how transparent should you be